Here's a fascinating story. The head of the National Museum of the Great Lakes is on a quest. He's trying to locate Navy pilots who trained on Lake Michigan during World War II. It's a little-known chapter of the lake's history and subject of a new documentary called Heroes on Deck. Joining me now is Great Lakes Today reporter Elizabeth Miller with more on this mission to find a few great men. So tell me more about Heroes on Deck. What's it about?
Well, it's a documentary, and it's about U.S. Navy pilots who trained on Lake Michigan between 1942 and 1945. And so they were training to be carrier pilots to fight in Japan during World War II. And so the director of the documentary, John Davies, told me that they used Lake Michigan because it was the safest place to train these pilots. They used two ships, the USS Sable and the USS Wolverine. Sable was built in Lorraine and Wolverine was built in Detroit. And these were passenger ships used for cruises. And so what they did was strip the decks off the ship and turn them into makeshift aircraft carriers. And pilots would arrive in Chicago for a 3-day crash course. The first day they would be learning in a classroom, and the second day they'd practice landing in chalk outlines on local fields. But the third day they would have to take off and land 8 times on the Sable or the Wolverine. And then if they successfully did that, they would go to California and then Japan. The number of pilots that trained here varies. The director of the film says 15,000, the Navy says 35,000. But either way, a lot of men trained on these ships, including former President George H.W. Bush.
Big discrepancy, 15,000 to 35,000. So I imagine there's still a few of them out there. Why is the National Museum of the Great Lakes looking for them now?
Well, the National Museum of the Great Lakes Executive Director Christopher Gilchrist brought this documentary back to Ohio in August when he screened it in Toledo. And he had a great response there, but a couple of pilots showed up, which was a surprise to him. So ahead of this screening in Lakewood in December, Gilchrist wants to find any pilots that are still in Northeast Ohio. He estimates that out of 2,000 men, or there might be 2,000 that are still alive in the United States, but less than 10 in Northeast Ohio. So he wants to get them to the documentary, get them to the screening, and hear their stories.
And I imagine there are some personal stories within this doc.
Yes, definitely. They actually, the director of the film has home video from one of the landing officers, and you see him and his wife, you see him at the training, and also there's video from the National Archives included in the documentary as well. Another Navy pilot interviewed in Heroes on Deck is Chuck Downey, who was actually the youngest officer to train on Lake Michigan. And Chuck Downey and Beverly Dawson, who wrote a book about the naval station, they talk about the danger of the operation. Here's what they had to say.
A lot of the deckhands were at risk if the arresting wires came loose and strike someone.
Just in case a wire snaps, they gotta be below, because the wire can come around and cut their head off.
There were fires. Sometimes the deckhands would walk into an engine. That could be fatal.
And it was a dangerous operation. 8 pilots actually died during the training.
Wow. And I imagine with that many planes taking off and landing, there probably had to be some accidents where they missed the ship.
Yeah, over 200 airplanes at the bottom of Lake Michigan. And while some were recovered since then, there are still about 80 left in Lake Michigan. And Davies, the director of the film, says there's an added urgency to recovering these airplanes now due to an invasive species in the Great Lakes called the quagga mussel. And what the quagga mussel does is attach to metal and ruin these planes. So it's really important to get these planes out of Lake Michigan before it's too late.
Okay, fascinating story. Thank you so much. That's Great Lakes Today reporter Elizabeth Miller. Thank you again. Great Lakes Today is a collaboration of WBFO Buffalo, IdeaStream Cleveland, and WXXI Rochester. Again, the viewing of Heroes on Deck World War II on the Lake takes place Friday, December 2nd at 7 p.m. This will be at the Lakewood Civic Auditorium. For more information, please visit our website at ideastream.org/ideasnow.